we got a listener question from Peter and his kids Micah, Eliana, and Nathan. Peter wrote that he's always curious about what science can't explain. Not the big stuff like quantum entanglement, but the little things you'd think we had already figured out by now. So here's his question. What are the everyday things that we can't explain or have only recently been understood?
And I wanted to start today's episode with this because we talk about science all the time. So I think it's really worth explaining where we're coming from when we talk about science and research and what are the limits of science.
Absolutely. This is a big question, and Cody and I have been talking about it nonstop since we got it. We even put a call out on Twitter to see what suggestions others had. We're going to keep talking about it, but first I want to run down some of the most fascinating things we found that science can't explain. We've got links to learn more about all of these in the show notes. Here goes. We still don't know why we sleep or exactly how circadian rhythms work. We still don't have a mathematical model for how dominoes fall. Physicists are still puzzling over how to understand and predict turbulence, not just in the air, but in water or any other fluid. Scientists didn't know what caused the crack of a whip until 2002. It's not a sonic boom at the end of the whip, but a sonic boom from a loop in the whip traveling from your hand to the end faster than the speed of sound. In 2017, mechanical engineers figured out how shoelaces come untied. It's not little by little, but in a quick, catastrophic failure. It took a study in 2018 before scientists understood how cat tongues work so well for grooming. That same year, scientists finally figured out how washing machines actually get clothes clean. And just a few months ago, researchers put dandelion seed pods in a wind tunnel and finally figured out how they managed to float so far. Whew!
So that's a lot of things that we haven't figured out or recently figured out. And why is that?
Well, because there's just so much in the world, and a lot of these things seem to be so basic that, you might not get funding to just study such a tiny little topic.
Well, I think that answers the question, right? What are the things that we can't explain or have only recently been understood? But that's a little bit of a loaded question almost, because a lot of the things that we think we can explain or think we understand, we don't necessarily understand as well as we think. So Ashley and I spoke with Carl Zimmer, a science communicator who's written extensively about genetics. And he's recently published several books. And what Carl told us, and you'll be hearing from him on this podcast in the near future, is that, Mendel squares are still a thing, like you learned in biology class. But our understanding of genetics beyond that is progressing really rapidly. And so many things that we thought were true for many, many centuries are maybe not necessarily true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, science is a process. It's not just an answer. You don't just open a science book and you see an answer to your question and that's it. Science is about testing and experimenting and getting the best answers we can with the information that we have right now.
Yes, and that is why we're very careful about our language when we talk to you in the podcast. If a new study suggests something or new findings could imply something, it's not, scientists ran an experiment on 30 people, and that means this is exactly why every single person does this. There's always exceptions, and there's always more that we can surmise. What science allows us to do is, through repeated studies and repeated research and repeated observations, we're able to detect patterns. And through more research and more observations, we may detect that those patterns don't hold as true as we originally thought.
And we always just get closer to the truth, just ever, ever closer.